Welcome to the Edge You Magic New Educator podcast, the go-to show for supporting new educators navigating the exciting journey from campus to the classroom. Join your host, Dr. Sam Fessich, for a blend of inspiration, advice, and practical strategies, one cup of coffee at a time.
I'm Christy Hemingway, host of Ed Curation, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Hello, Edge Magicians, and welcome back to another episode of the Edgy Magic Podcast. My name is Dr. Sam Fessich, and today I'm here with Yasha Chapman, and we're going to be talking all things engaging learning experiences for students. So if you are a student teacher or a new teacher, jump in. We are so excited for today's chat. Yasha, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited that you're here. Before we jump into instruction and content and all those great things that teachers do, would you mind sharing with the audience a little bit about who you are and what brought you into education?
Sure. So I am originally from Savannah, Georgia. I'm a military spouse. And so I have the fortunate experience of traveling every 3 to 4 years to a new place.
Ooh.
And with that, I get to see a vast majority of our nation's educational landscape. And I get to see what we're doing really good in and also other areas that need improvement. And so what got me into education, long story short, I started off as a chemistry major. And it wasn't working out for me in that department. Took some personality tests, and elementary school teacher kept popping up. I went to shadow a teacher. A student asked if I could be her mom because she appreciated the way I helped her.
Mm-hmm.
And it was at that moment that the light bulb went off. And it was, this is what I want to do every day.
Oh, fantastic. Can you share what you're doing now in education?
Yeah, so now I am an instructional coach, and I am also an education consultant. And so I partner with schools and different organizations to provide training and coaching services for beginning teachers and as well as beginning instructional coaches.
Oh, beautiful. So we're going to kind of talk for new teachers today, but I'd love to hear more about your work with instructional coaches too. Maybe we can chat about that towards the end of the episode today.
Oh, for sure.
Awesome. All right. So let's start off with, we know that we've all had teachers who are great with their content. They know it inside and out, but to make it engaging, meaningful, effective for students, they may need some support, right? So how do teachers create engaging learning experiences for their students?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, the first thing that we should all do is get to know our students.
Yeah.
So with doing that, we have to know what they like, what they don't like, what they care about, whether that's sports, TV shows, hobbies, comic books, riddles, and whatever those things are, we have to find ways to incorporate those within our lessons to make those bridges to connect it. And so by incorporating their likes and their interests, we also have to make sure that we're incorporating an exploration process. So when we're planning our lessons, we want to plan that at some point our students are having an opportunity to explore, whether that's with hands-on engagement, visuals. We want to lead them through the process of learning without just, giving them all the information themselves, kind of having them go through that productive struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you can use hand gestures, movements, bringing technology into lesson plans. One activity I did every year with my students that was a hit was our science unit on weather, and they became meteorologists.
Ooh.
And so I teamed up with our tech person in the building, and they got in front of a green screen, and we sent home letters to parents to have them dress up as their best, and they read a script, and it was a whole thing. So the school got to see their meteorologist reports when it suited the weather for that day.
Mm-hmm.
So what turned out into a small classroom project was used for the entire school. And so it's pretty cool. So things that are some ways that you can create engaging learning experiences.
But I'm also hearing they're not just engaging and hands-on, but they're also memorable moments for learning.
Oh, yeah. The whole point is to make it an experience, right? Something that they can remember and hold on to. So I remember another science unit at the States of Matter. And so I just played an instrumental beat of a popular song, and they had to write the vocabulary of that unit, and they had to make it make sense about the states of matter, and they got to perform it. And so as they were taking a test, I would remind them, what song did you make up? Go back to whatever song you made up and use that. And it actually helped them with the material. And so it's really just incorporating what they like, what they're used to. You don't have to, reinvent the wheel, and just create those experiences, like you stated, that's memorable for them.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that. Two great examples right off the bat there. I think oftentimes when we get into a classroom, especially as new teachers, some might be nervous to move away from that textbook and provided curriculum, provided workbooks, worksheets, all that stuff. What are some ways teachers can move beyond their quote unquote regularly scheduled programming with the curriculum and the content that's provided to really include additional materials and resources to enrich that instructional experience?
Oh, yeah. Well, one way they can absolutely enrich it is to plan field trips.
Oh, yeah.
Field trip. I know the pandemic kind of put a halt to field trips around the country, but we're safe now. So yeah, planning those field trips that can definitely enhance and deepen their understanding of the concepts or whatever unit that you're learning. I'm bringing in guest speakers who are also knowledgeable of that content and can help enhance that understanding. Exploring platforms that offer interactive simulations where they could do virtual tours. I know, for example, Google Maps is a really good one when just exploring where we are in the world. I know there's a social studies unit on that for primary grades. And so just seeing them, having them explain, okay, guys, we're going to be astronauts. We're going to go out in space. And so I turn all the lights off and they see Earth from Google Earth. And then we go closer into our state, into our city, eventually into our school. So things that really give them, like I said, that interactive simulation of geographical locations and just a deeper understanding of the content. You could also incorporate documentaries, podcasts, audiobooks are really good, especially if you're teaching fluency and reading with expression. I feel like audiobooks are a really great tool for students to hear how other readers read so that they can mimic it. So this is just a few ideas of how you can move beyond the text.
What about when we're looking at our curriculum and our textbooks and things like that were provided, and sometimes in that teacher manual it has a little spot for adaptations or modifications you could make, and really in-depth modifications or adaptations. What are some strategies that you have for our new teachers to provide those adaptations for students who might need that additional help or additional scaffolding?
Well, definitely you want to use your data. A lot of times we hear the term data driven, but we want to be data informed. So you want to allow that data to inform you. What is it telling you? And when you have that data, you can then strategically target your groups, depending on how you have your students' groups, to do those modifications and to do those adaptations. So that's one really easy and specific targeted way to incorporate those adaptations and modifications in order to make sure your students are meeting their goals and getting that extra practice.
Yasha, I love how you said data informed. What are we going to do with this information to inform our practice, to inform the way we assess, to inform the way we present the content to our students? That means so much more to me as a teacher than data driven. Data informed means I can do something with this and I'm empowered to do something with this.
Yes.
Ooh, I like that. That is great. I think I'm going to start using that. That's awesome.
Absolutely. It changes everything.
It's a vocabulary switch, but it's also a mindset shift too. It's from something I have to do to something I get to do. I have to take data, but I get to make changes on this data.
Yeah.
I get to make changes.
Right. And it's almost like I always see education as being like a doctor, being surgical and prescriptive in that way of, okay, I tried this method. Now, what if I tried this? Or I gave this patient this pill, but that didn't work. Or I gave them this adverse symptoms. Let me try. So it's really the same thing in education. I tried this strategy with this and this didn't work. So what else can I do? Having that data inform you to be surgical in that way and figure out what really works. And every child will walk away with a specific prescription.
Oh, I love that. That's awesome. Very good for differentiated instruction and scaffolding and finding those adaptations that fit for that student. Um,
Absolutely.
One other thing I wanted to ask about was for our new teachers who are listening, and maybe they just graduated and they did their student teaching, and now they're doing a long-term sub, or maybe they're a first-year teacher listening in today. What are some ways they can go from that student teaching role of I've worked with my cooperating teacher, my mentor teacher, and they did things this one way, and I don't know what to do beyond that. So what are some ways to kind of, I guess what I'm asking is get outside their comfort zone a little bit when it
Mhm.
comes to instruction and engaging students? What are some small steps our student teachers or our new teachers can take in that space of getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, I think is what I'm trying to ask.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a really good question. And this is something I often coach new teachers on. And really, what you have to realize is you don't have to get uncomfortable at all if you bring your personality to work.
Mm,
So one thing I like to think of is how, yes, we've had the opportunity to work with other teachers and observed how they instruct, but what will make it different for us is how we bring our own personal gifts and talents to the
yes.
classroom. So, for example, I used to dance. I have a background in dance. And so I would get my students and we're going to create dance movements to learn these vocabulary words. It was
Mm-hmm.
fun for me. And of course, it was fun for them because they get to move, of course, within structured guidelines and things of that nature. But it broke up the monotony of just the textbooks and just, okay, I saw her do it this way. So I'm going to, no, we have to get up and move because I want to have fun too. This is
Yeah.
my time being spent as well. So I also coach a teacher who played the guitar. And so I had to bring your guitar in, play a
Yeah.
song, play it during transitions or, make it a reward for your students. Anything that adds a piece of yourself where you can
Mhm.
bring your full self, your fullness into the classroom. And so you don't have to pretend. You don't have to be uncomfortable. You might have to get uncomfortable with being silly, but really who's a better audience to be silly with than the children
Right.
that we teach? We really should be free. That should, for me, that should be the one place where you are fully free to be your childlike self in your adult body. So that would be my advice, is to just bring your personality to work, bring your gifts and your talents and incorporate it into your teaching style.
I love that. That's fantastic. That's so much fun. And as you
Mhm.
were talking, I was just smiling, thinking about, all these gifts that teachers have and they can bring into that classroom space to enrich it and to make it a more engaging space for our learners.
Absolutely.
Beyond creating engaging, meaningful, authentic instruction for our students, we also have to make sure it makes sense and that it's coherent and that's quality instruction. We're using peer reviewed resources and pedagogies and strategies. What are some ways teachers can get started in developing that coherent quality instruction that's also based on research, not just something we're seeing, oh, that looks cool on Pinterest, or wow,
Mhm.
check out this cool thing that an Instagram teacher is using.
Right.
Just to make sure that we're using quality best practices.
Right. I love the key word there is quality, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so with anything that's quality, we have to make sure that it's aligned and that we are being intentional with how we plan and where we place things so that it does make sense. So the first thing you want to do is make sure your lesson plan is structured. It has a flow to it that makes sense in a sequential order, and that you have clear learning objectives. You have to know where you're going. What is
Yes.
the destination here? And so backwards design planning is really a good place to start, and good strategy when you're planning your quality lesson plans. Another thing to incorporate, I would say, clear communication. And depending on what grade level you work with, you definitely want to make sure that your instructions are bite-sized so that the students, you're not giving them like an essay
Mm-hmm.
to take in, and they're trying to figure out the only thing they're going to hear is the last thing you said, and they're going to miss the first five things. So making it concise, bite-sized instructions, using clear communications, even providing visuals with your instructions for our ELL learners or for students who have different modifications and accommodations that are needed. Those providing those visuals, scaffolds as well can help. You definitely, my biggest thing, modeling. You want to model. I cannot say that enough. Oftentimes teachers just tell students what to do, and the game changer is when you show them what to do. And so modeling your expectations, modeling how to write your name on the paper, what it should look like, even what good handwriting looks like, getting down to the nitty-gritty of it, all of the things. So modeling, giving them a student exemplar of what their work should look like when they're finished, as opposed to just telling them this is the product, and then when they do it, you want them to do it over, or it's not satisfactory. We want to make sure that we're setting them up for success from the beginning. So giving them those student exemplar, teacher exemplar, modeling for them, differentiating, we mentioned that before, making sure that you are truly meeting them where they are, incorporating higher order thinking questions to promote the critical thinking skills. And just ensuring that we're making connections to things that are relevant and purposeful to them. And I think the most important piece is making sure that we're also being self-reflective in our practice.
Yes.
I just gave you a lot there, but
absolutely. Well, I think the listeners are going to have to go back, rewind, and piece that out, because there was so much gold in that response when designing coherent quality instruction for our students. It not only sets us up for success, it also sets our students up for success, which is what we need and what we want in our classroom spaces.
Absolutely. Because just like we have to know what the end goal is, they need to know too.
Yasha, you had mentioned at the beginning of our conversation that you're an instructional coach and you work with new coaches and new teachers. We talked a lot about new teachers in today's episode. Let's take a little shift and look at the work that you do for new instructional coaches. Could you share a little bit more about that part of your role?
Yes. And so it's pretty similar to what I do with beginning teachers. So I have coaching programs, and I also provide professional development training around topics that are specific to their work as well. And so topics such as planning data meetings, planning weekly meetings, showing teachers how to identify gaps within student work, things of that nature. And just overall, just for beginning instructional coaches, like what is coaching, what it all entails, learning how to go from being a peer colleague, sometimes for those teachers who are transitioning from a teacher to a coach within the same building. Sometimes that's a hard mental shift to go from colleague to now I am your administrator. And so we go over steps and strategies for that. And so, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Just looking at data, identifying gaps, and any other topics that those coaches feel like they need help on. So I do a lot of customization and just meeting their personal goals or their school goals, district goals, etc.
That's awesome. That's such a neat role to have. And, you're impacting not only teachers, but also students in that role in a different way. So you're impacting students through the work that you're doing in instructional coaching to help support the teachers to be the best that they can be, and therefore impacting students. So even as an administrator, instructional coach to an instructional coach, impacting students in that way. It's so neat.
Yes. I love it. It's just the more impact, the better, the more lives we can change, the more gaps we can close, the more opportunities we give our students.
That's beautifully stated. And Yasha, before we end out our conversation, can you please let my listeners know where we can connect with you and learn more about your work?
Absolutely. You can visit my website at www.lmedevolve.com. You can also email me if you'd like at info@lmedevolve.com. I'm on LinkedIn, Elementary Education Evolve. I'm on Facebook under the same name, Instagram as well.
Awesome. And I'll make sure I put all those links in our show notes today. Yasha, thank you so much for sharing with my audience.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a joy, and I love to collaborate or share ideas on anything else you have coming up.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the EduMagic New Educator podcast. If you found it helpful, please leave a rating and review or share it with a friend. Always remember, you have the EduMagic in you.